Welcome back to Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic comes from the subreddit exLutheran, posted by user whelp-that-was-life. This was posted a year ago. Please note that what I am about to transcribe for you today has a trigger warning. The post is a text post that is titled, "I almost filed a lawsuit against Martin Luther College," parentheses, WELS, and parentheses, trigger warning, end parentheses. Note that the words trigger warning are in all caps. The tag for this post is personal story. The post reads as follows. In bold, TW. The following includes a personal story that shares topics involving suicide, PTSD, depression, anxiety, self-harm, eating disorders, and trauma. I am sharing this story because I really think it is going to play a role in my healing process to just get it all out somewhere. End bold. Note, the word somewhere is in caps. I used to be one of them, one of the, quote, "why didn't you go to MLC," end quote. The word you is in all caps. Parentheses, Martin Luther College, the college for teacher/pastor training in the WELS, end parentheses. I didn't mean it in a facetious way. I just thought that person would make a great pastor/teacher and that MLC was going to be a wonderful place where I could share my faith, along with those who believed in the same thing as me. Everyone told me it was great and that I was going to be a good teacher and that I'd love MLC. If I had any idea what was coming for me, I wonder if I would have still gone there. To this day, I still struggle with my faith and pray that God strengthens me and helps me overcome the literal trauma, parentheses, that's right, I'm diagnosed with PTSD now, thanks MLC and all the other garbage I went through in New Ulm and the places otherwise, end parentheses. Parentheses, in bold. Again, as stated, the following includes some very heavy topics. Please don't read if it is going to bring bad thoughts or trigger you. End parentheses and bold. I should begin by clarifying that I had struggled with my mental health severely since freshman year of high school, parentheses, or at least that's when it got really bad, end parentheses. The word really is in italics. I think I've had anxiety since I was a kid. When I was in my sophomore year of high school until I got to MLC, my mental health was at its worst, and I was counting the calories in a stick of gum, reducing my meal consumption for a day to 400 calories. My junior year of high school, my mom was crying on the phone talking to my aunt, then sat next to me in tears. I had a feeling about was about, but I smiled and acted like she was being weird, saying, quote, what's wrong, end quote. She told me my best friend and confided in her and told her I was self-harming. I thought to myself as I packed for college, quote, things will be better. I'm out of high school, which was impacting my mental health negatively, end quote. I acknowledge that I had preconceived notions and promises about what MLC would be like that led me to idealize it, and that is my mistake. Note that what I just read was in italics, and now we get to the non-italicized portion. Things started out rough with a random roommate I was assigned. She wasn't very kind and was very closed off. I recall in particular she told me she started a club at her high school dedicated to, quote, I hate blank club, end quote. It was an immediate nope from me, and I never talked to her about almost anything ever again. I knew my mental health still needed to be worked on, but I didn't know how to ask for help because you, and this next part is in all caps, need to ask the campus pastor for approval to see one of their licensed therapists that are available through the school. End caps. Side note, that is a ridiculous hoop to have students jump through. It is hard enough to get students to seek medical attention for their mental health. And you want them to have to be forced to talk to the campus pastor before they even get those resources? You can fuck right off with that attitude. I continue reading. I was in a new place and I was not doing well. I was still excelling in my classes, but I became reclusive, hardly even leaving my room for meals, much less engaging in socialization. At the time, I wasn't cutting, but as I spiraled deeper into loneliness and isolation, I began to again. I was suffering and I didn't even understand why. I was on meds. Isn't that supposed to fix things? But no one asked. No one seemed to notice, at least, that I was so in need of help. But maybe that's because I've become a master at acting like I'm okay. I'm not sure. I knew I needed help, and at the time, I was very good at self-advocating and was very open to telling others about my struggle because I figured if I talk about it, maybe others will have the courage to talk about it too. So I reported it to my RAs. Now and even then, I held no is in all caps, resentment toward them, as they are mandated reporters. They were doing their job, and it was out of concern for me. They notified the dorm supervisor, who immediately came into my dorm, had me go to her office, and pressured me into going to the ER, parentheses. I've been before. They do nothing unless you have a literal plan to kill yourself. I think she had my best interests at heart, but she's been working there a long time, so I was surprised that it seemed like she was not handling my situation well. I think it's because she's used to handling disciplinary things, so she said things to me like, quote, "You need to get yourself together," end quote. These came off to me as, quote, "How dare you have mental health struggles? You're a Christian and you're WELS," end quote. Note the words "your WELS" are in all caps. The ER did exactly as expected. At around 5 a.m., I was finally released, but not before the man who was about to cause the worst pain in my life, parentheses, VP of Student Life, Jeffrey Jong, end parentheses, was notified. He then proceeded to call my parents and completely overreacted, saying they would probably need to come pick me up because MLC couldn't, quote, handle these kinds of things, end quote. I think it really just made their lives easier and less of a liability, I'm sure. Worst thing to tell my parents, though, because it told me, quote, in all caps, "We don't want you here," end quote, end caps. Little side note, I was so stressed and overwhelmed and sleep deprived that when I got back to my dorm from the ER, I was changing my SD card on my phone when I had the worst head pain imaginable. I stood up to go lie down, and the next thing I knew, I heard a faint thud. I woke up on the floor, my chair tipped over on its side. I'd had one witnessed grand mal seizure before, and my neurologist now says it's extremely likely I'd had another that night. Diagnosed with epilepsy now. Anyway, they didn't really seem to care that I went to bed so late and had a seizure because they ordered me to have a meeting with VP Jong and the dorm supervisor at 10 a.m. In that meeting, they told me the same thing. I need to get myself together. I need to find a therapist by myself. I shouldn't do that anymore. Your grades are all A's. How could you have... Your grades are all A's. How could you have depression? The list of horrible things they said to me goes on and on. After I told my parents this, they were extremely pissed off. Thankfully, he acknowledged to him that he'd overreacted and promised he'd apologize to me. Still waiting on that apology, by the way. I see the campus pastor. I get a therapist. I start seeing them. Things still aren't going well. I'm spiraling further, and I'm still upset about the way that they handled the situation and the fact that he didn't seem to care enough or was too self-righteous to apologize or even give an inkling of remorse about what he did. At the time, the new president of the school, parentheses, this is 2021, in parentheses, was conducting meetings to get to know the students, and of course, me being me, told him about the events that transpired. He promised to speak to him. My dad told me not to talk to VP Schoen anymore because it was negatively affecting my mental health, and I agreed, sending him an email that I would no longer like to talk to him like he'd planned. In response, I received the following email. I literally have a screenshot of it, so I am so serious that this is his response point blank. Note the word "so" is in all caps. I continue reading to the email. Hello, blank. I am very troubled by your email. I do not understand what you are implying when you write that you are not interested in meeting with us or comfortable releasing information to us. As it happens, God the Holy Spirit has called us to meet with and help people like you who have evidenced difficulties in their mental/emotional lives. We are obligated to meet with you and, in fact, are also obligated to watch, work with, and assist you so that we can recommend emotionally stable individuals for assignment into our WELS ministry as competent teachers. What you write is extremely adversarial and hurtful, especially considering the great efforts we have already made in order to help and safeguard you. You expressed thoughts of suicide, a very serious matter. You told us you had hurt yourself. A very serious matter. Are you saying that you were not serious when you communicated these matters to us? Were you expecting that we would not take you seriously? I also wonder if you were surprised when I spoke plainly and forthrightly to you about these matters when we did finally meet. Perhaps you did not like what I had to say, ... Maybe that, in itself, is something that we need to continue to talk about. What you have just written to me is unrealistic and self-serving. I am sorry that you wrote such things about people who have true and honest desires to help you. We are going to meet again. We are going to talk further. We are going to explore every way to help a person who has expressed thoughts of suicide and self-harm and has a past history of self-harm. I'm sorry if you feel that you can decide these matters on your own and by yourself, as if the ministry of the gospel is yours to do with as you wish. That is not the case. We are here to help you, and we will do everything that is necessary to do so. I am not eager to carry on conversations via email. If you have such matters to discuss with me, I expect you to do so in person so that we can interact and converse as adults. God keep you in his gracious care. VP Schoen. Side note, before we get into OP's statements here, I want to point out that this writing of this email is very much, screams very much WELS Lutheran. From the subtle gaslighting into, well, do you really think that you were serious about your mental health, or are you just faking it? Mentality to the, well, let's not communicate an email when it's written down. We need to talk about this in person like we're adults so that whatever I say isn't on record and you can't hold it against me. And because of my status in the WELS, I'm going to be believed and not you. And I want to highlight one more thing. When VP Schoen allegedly, and I say allegedly just because I don't have the screenshot that has the proof of his writing on it, I believe OP's story and I believe that it's true. But again, because I don't have the evidence to showcase it on screen, I have to still say allegedly. When Schoen allegedly wrote that he thinks that his perception of OP is, to quote, as if the ministry of the gospel is yours to do with as you wish, end quote. That is also very much a control tactic as well, and that's not uncommon in the WELS or any of the other synods. As much as they would tell you that you are able to go out and serve in the world in whatever vocation you choose, As soon as you express the desire to serve in any pastor or teacher function, it immediately becomes shut down, even more strictly hierarchical, and you have no choice but to comply with what they demand of you in order to be able to serve in the field that you wish. You might as well just go to the public school and teach there, because you are going to get a lot more satisfaction and get a job quicker than you are going to be able to make these people happy with what they perceive you to be. You're also just going to be a lot less stressed and happier because you're not expected to put on this WELS front. If OP chooses, for whatever reason, to try and serve in some kind of teaching capacity, regardless of what deity they believe in, they are more than happy to do so. They have as much of a right to serve in the gospel and according to the mission of the gospel, whatever they perceive it to be, as much as anyone else, and that goes double for VP Jong. I continue reading. Note this is after the email finishes with VP Jong. Rereading this again, it makes me laugh how childish it is. My dad is pissed again, calls him again. He acts all apologetic and again promises to apologize to me. My aunt is pissed. Emails the president saying this has happened to too many students and it's time for him to go. The whole quote, "I'll take that into consideration," end quote. Nothing happens, at least to my knowledge. The aftermath left me in a state of despair. I dreamed about the places I could off myself, hoping I'd send a message, and my suffering. Let me feel some semblance of peace. I hope this email haunts him forever. This all happened in September when I was literally a month into my schooling, so the fact that he told me in the first meeting that he thought he, quote, had me all figured out, end quote, was laughable too. Come May, and I'm done. Done is in all caps. No apology, no remorse, just clipped hellos from him as I walked around campus. Just seeing him made my throat tighten up and made me sick to my stomach. To this day, just thinking about it makes me upset. I decide to transfer, parentheses, the best decision I ever made, besides getting a puppy as an emotional support animal. Not even kidding, this little guy practically cured my depression. And parentheses. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. I don't know if I'm even WELS anymore. I'm so hurt, so traumatized. I still have to work on unpacking it all in therapy. I feel I need the trauma, because if I don't have it, no one remembers what they did. If no one remembers what they did, they get away with it. If they get away with it, then I continue to suffer the trauma and repercussions of their actions without closure. I looked into filing a lawsuit against the college since they handled things so poorly and didn't fire him. Parentheses, though I hear after 2 years he's retiring or taking a call or something, so good riddance. End parentheses. I decided not to go through it because I don't have the money, and I don't know how to properly articulate all that I've gone through. This is a story I feel I need to share. I've been considering it for a long time. I know some WELS members still read through the subreddit and judge, but I ask that you consider for a moment, if you're supposedly, quote, on the side of truth, end quote, whose side are you on? As of recording, this post has 32 upvotes and 60 comments. One of the comments I'm going to highlight here is from OP, who put an edit. Almost forgot to mention the therapists must report back to the administrators about their meetings with students and the details of it, thus violating HIPAA, and this was my case for lawsuit. If you would like to express your support of OP, the link for this article in the subreddit is in the show notes below. This is why I cover stories like these, especially from the WELS and LCMS side. Those denominations are relatively tiny in the grand scheme of things. They are relatively easy, and I say easy because of how small they are. It's relatively easy to have bad behaviors by them get buried super quickly. This is why I cover stuff like this. Because people need to be held to a higher standard than what they're at now. You can bully people in the WELS. You can bully people in the LCMS. You can sexually harass people. You can threaten people. And as long as you're part of the in-group, you will be protected. And as long as you're part of the out-group, you will never be taken seriously. In the worst cases I've covered here, people have had to file lawsuits or take people to criminal court. That is not fair to ask of people. If the WELS really wanted to be on the side of truth, they would have a process for victims without victim blaming them, without trying to force them into perpetual silence. The fact that they do not, and that they're okay with covering up these stories, makes it even more vital that these stories get covered and are out there in the public eye. I guarantee you that average members of WELS or average WELS adjacent people don't know anything about this because they're so small and because it's so easy to bury these things. If there's more things that you want me to cover, please email me. My email is in the show notes below. Please reach out to me. Please provide me with links. I will use discretion and I will not release any information about you unless you directly ask me to. Thank you for watching / listening to this video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.
Seeds of hope, they still grow. Sheets of white over